And welcome to another episode of Patriots 4th and 2. I am your host today, Derek Havens, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Steve Balsheria. We are both PatsFans.com bloggers. Hopefully, our other co-host, Russ Goldman, will be joining us shortly. He's just a little running behind this morning. First and foremost, I want to wish all our listeners and viewers on YouTube, hope you had a happy new year. Hope you had a healthy, safe, fun holiday season. We apologize for not being able to get together last week. It was hard. I was traveling. I know Steve had people in town, visiting, and it just kind of got away from us there. Plus, I had the flu. Also, 'tis the season, so probably for the best. But Steve, we have plenty of things to talk about. It's a really, I guess, unsettled NFL situation right now, and the tip of that came from an incredibly scary moment this past week, and what was, I guess, deemed one of the more anticipated regular season games between the Bengals and Bills this season. Certainly took a turn that I don't think anyone anticipated. Certainly didn't want, where Bills defensive back Damar Hamlin collapsed on the field after making a tackle. Actually, and everyone kind of listening knows the story. Anyone who listens to this podcast has seen the story. It's been obviously very well covered. And I just want to take a minute to just say, praying for this young man. It was a very, very, really raw and horrifying incident, to say the least, and just really kind of jarring. Even if you're a sports fan, you went from being a really big sports fan to being like, holy crap, this is a really big like human moment where it's so relatable, and you see just so much hurt and pain and sadness and shock, and it was just a really wild roller coaster of emotions. I just praying for his family, for his friends, for his teammates. Just a really, really scary situation. Steve, share your thoughts on the Damar Hamlin situation. Something that you just never want to see on any sports field and any event. It was, just give me how you felt and your reaction to that situation.
Oh, like you watching the game because it was billed as one of the biggest games of the year, which it
Yeah,
was.
yeah,
I was looking forward to watching a great football game between two excellent football teams,
mm,
and then to see that, it's a scary situation, and then to see the reaction on the players, then it becomes even worse at that point. Um, I thought the ESPN crew, I thought they did an admirable job. I know
absolutely.
Joe Buck comes under a lot of criticism all the time, but this was something that I thought, these guys have never faced before. Talking about, because they're the television announcers, and they're at a loss for words like everyone else was. But I thought they handled it really classily, and I absolutely loved uh, what one commentator said, and that's this guy I frequently agree and disagree with Ryan Clark, because he was talking about these guys can't go back out and play after
Hmm.
all what happened. I thought Lisa Salters, who was an investigative reporter, handled things really well. But I
Yep.
mean, it was shocking to say the least. And back when I was a kid, I remember watching a game in October 1971.
About Chuck Hughes, the Lions receiver.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I remember watching that, and then he was going back to his huddle, because as a kid you'd never expect to see anything like that on a football field. You think of these guys as indestructible,
Yep.
and I watched them collapse, and then Dick Butkus, the opposing guy, was waving to the Lions bench like we saw on Monday night, and it ended up Hughes passed away. They couldn't revive him back then. they didn't have the defibrillators and, whatnot
Yep.
that they do today. But he passed away. Later on, it was learned he had advanced heart disease, like of a 75, 80-year-old, but no one knew, even though he had been complaining about chest pains and stuff to the Lions staff prior to the game. So it was heart-wrenching to see that, because I'm thinking, oh my, here we go again, and he actually, he stopped living there on the field. They had to do CPR twice on him, once on the field and once when he got to the hospital again. And that's some scary stuff, and it transcends football at that point.
Yeah, no, it does, and it's something that thankfully the NFL hasn't seen in 50 years. Again, I thought Ryan Clark, I thought he had some excellent comments on Scott Van Pelt's show on ESPN too, where he was talking about, the human element of everything. And I just think, I just keep getting back to that. Like when you saw, like there was a couple of shots of some of the Bills players when they kind of made a wall. I also want to say this before I say what I was going to say. I think what the Bills, how the Bills players acted, how the Bengals players reacted, how Zach Taylor for the Bengals head coach and Sean McDermott, the Bills head coach. I thought everyone on that field handled that situation about as well as you could possibly expect. I give Zach Taylor a ton of credit for immediately walking over to Sean McDermott and just trying to figure out, the situation and take care of him, because McDermott, was a mess, and the look and the line in some of the players' eyes, like some of the linemen, Josh Allen's reaction, it was just like you just knew the panic in their eyes. It just hit you. It hit you from just right in the feels. It was Anyway, it is definitely a situation that, man, we are just hoping for some good news, and it seems like the young man is progressing in a positive direction. Just based on very limited information, but anyway, again, just praying for him and his family. I think it's one of the coolest things that's come out of this is how much money has been raised for Damar Hamilton's for his foundation, which produces an annual toy drive for kids, and I just think that's really incredible. He was. You go from having a goal of having $2,500 for toys for kids, and it's raised over $5 million in 48 hours. It's just absolutely incredible.
Well, it shows that, the NFL fans,
sure,
they realize the difference between rooting for your team and rooting for a player to live. And that's such a big thing. And I thought the crowd in the stadium and, online, I think everyone handled it very well, because at that point, it was about life or death and not about, who wins the football game. At that point, it doesn't even matter. And right. I thought, like you said, it was a really poignant moment watching the Bills players. And Booger McFarland also made some great comments,
He did. He was excellent.
Yeah,
the whole ESPN crew was absolutely incredible.
Yes, I'm frequently critical of those guys, but I thought Monday night they handled that, I think, as absolute best as you possibly could in that type of situation.
Well, even Booger McFarland said that he was eating dinner. Yeah. And he got a call saying, like, hey, you got to get back on air. And he's like, what do you want us to say?
Right. Him and Adam Schefter both, right? Yeah, they both felt the same way. We don't know what we're supposed to say in this. And again, it's really tough. But the one thing I took away from that, was McFarland and Clark both said the same thing. We're trained to be violent on the field. That's our job. So we can take the sprains. We can take the bruises. We can take the broken bones, But when it becomes life or death, all that goes out the window. And then you become a human again. Mm-hmm. And, kind of paraphrasing there, but you know where I'm coming from with that. But it was really, really difficult. And I felt so bad for everyone, involved with that, with the Bills, the Bengals. I mean, think of how T. Higgins must feel right now. I know he sent a message to the family. I mean, it wasn't anything intentional. It's just
No, of course
it's
not.
just the way the game is played.
Sure, he probably feels just horrible. I don't think anyone needs to needs to ponder how he's feeling. I can't imagine it's good, So it's a really it was just a surreal situation on so many levels. And again, I'm just hoping for the best, Steve. I mean,
Yeah,
that's all we can do.
absolutely.
And and look, okay, I'm not trying to sound callous here, of course. But there are football ramifications too. Okay, and so it's a weird ripple effect that I don't know what the NFL is going to do. I really don't. I
Exactly.
mean, they're in a pickle. They're in a pickle. So it's like, do you call the Bengals Bills a tie? Do you try to push things back? A week. They've been talking about eliminating the week. The bye week before the Super Bowl and trying to create like a week 19, so to speak. And it's just a really weird situation because even if you call the Bills Bengals a tie, well, they were battling for the number 1 seed, and does that leave a team potentially out? Like there's just so many questions, Steve, that we don't really know the answers to. So just how we'll talk about this for a second. I'm going to share one or two thoughts on the Bengals game because I was in attendance, which was nice. And we'll talk about the Dolphins game, and then I don't think we're going to even preview the Bills game, Steve. I think what we're going to do is wait to see what the NFL decides to do. If they decide to play the Patriots Bills game this weekend, then we'll do another show for 15, 20 minutes talking about the Bills game. And if they push it back a week, then we'll just save the preview for next week. Okay, so that's kind of what we'll do. But what do you think the NFL should do? Like, if you were commissioner, how would you handle this situation?
If
And
it
that's a
was
loaded
me,
question.
yeah, if it was me, I would picked up the game where it stopped on Sunday, and then I would push the Bills Patriots game to maybe Thursday, and then add in and push the entire schedule back.
Yep.
I think that's the only way you could really do it, in a football sense, to be fair to all the teams that are involved, because there's so many scenarios that could play out because of that Bills Bengals game and the Bills Patriots game. I mean, it's all interconnected. So while you want the game to be played, I don't know. I mean, that's such a difficult position, but I think, with the ramifications of the game itself, I think maybe you pick that game up on Sunday, you move the Patriots game back to Thursday, and then, I and again, it throws another curveball in the wrench, because what if Buffalo loses the game to Cincinnati, and they're no longer the number 1 seed, then they play the Patriots. The Patriots could still make the playoffs even if they lose the game. So then you're going to ask them to play on Thursday and then play again on Sunday. I mean, that you can't do that.
No, but I just think there's too many obstacles. There's too many obstacles to keep doing that, because I think it starts a kind of a domino effect that I'm not sure you can stop. And so to me, the only thing I can think of is, and I'm sure people won't like it, but call the game a tie. You might need to push everything back a week anyway, because I just don't know I don't know where players are. Like, I don't know. I mean, in terms of mentally, I'm sure it affected a lot of I mean, obviously, it affected a lot of players who weren't even at the game. Who weren't even there.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think you're eliminating the week before the Super Bowl seems like the only thing that you can really do without starting that massive ripple effect. And I don't know what the right answer is. I have no idea. And I've been kind of curious just seeing how the NFL has handled this whole situation. And I know they got a lot of criticism the night of the incident, because they said, because the officials told the players that, hey, warm up for 5 minutes and then we'll get back started. Troy Vincent, of course, shot it down. I don't know what they said. Maybe that's like procedure when someone gets taken off the field, but I don't know what procedure is. I don't know if anyone knows if someone has a cardiac event on the field, right? So it's like, I don't know. I think everyone was handling the situation like they had never seen it before, because they, like to your point, it hasn't happened in 50 years, thankfully.
Yeah.
So it's one of those situations where I think everyone was kind of scrambling, and then people were wondering why the league didn't cancel the game sooner. And I had the same first reaction. My only thought there was that they were just kind of, they had let the coaches kind of figure out, like, hey, you guys read the room and you tell me what we need to do. And maybe, I think there was a lot of back and forth communication, because I know people don't want to think about things like this, but I think the NFL knows how much money it generates, how many people are watching it, and they know how many connections they have, and there's sponsorships to think about, and there's a gambling aspect if you really want to go down that road of and all their connections to sports books. And I know that's kind of a weird. Again, I'm not trying to be callous. I'm just talking about the ripple effect of all the little things the league is probably going through. It probably looked like the trading room floor, when everything was going down, because there's just so many moving parts. So, I'm not one to not. I certainly have criticized the league plenty, just as you and I have criticized ESPN in the past. I'm kind of giving them a pass slightly on this one, because I don't have all the information, and I'm sure there was a lot of things they were trying to figure out too that were kind of unprecedented. It's like, how do you really handle a situation like that?
Well, I think it all stems from the public announcement that they're going to take a 5-minute break and come back and finish the game. If that hadn't been said, I don't think the league would have been criticized as much, because at the same time, in New York, they don't know what's going on with the players. I mean, they can see it on TV as well as everyone else, but you know, how the players feel about that. But I think that announcement was what threw everyone into a tizzy,
Sure.
myself included, because I was like, how do you expect these guys to go back out in 5 minutes and play? I think if that had been removed from the equation, I don't think the league would have been criticized as much, because, again, they hadn't dealt with anything like this in over 50 years. So nobody in the league office was probably alive at the time. Well, maybe a few, but
Yeah, but they were all young teenagers or something,
yeah,
kids.
yeah.
It's not. Again, it's not a situation. I'm sure. I don't know. I'm sure deep into the guidelines, there's probably something in there, but it's not something that they're going to be regularly preparing for. And again, it was a really weird situation. So I say weird. It's probably the worst word choice I could use, but there was just a lot of different things happening. And again, I think that how the Bills and Bengals staffs and players handled the situation was about as well as you could handle it.
Top
So,
notch. I
top
think
notch,
I give a
absolutely.
lot of credit to the Bills and Bengals coaches, because when they made that announcement, Zach Taylor walked right over the to the Bills sideline and talked to Sean McDermott, and basically saying, I don't
No,
think we should play. I mean, I'm
yeah,
paraphrasing. I don't know what they said, but it seemed like they were in total agreement with that, you
sure.
know. And, McDermott was emotional himself. I mean, you watch that happen to one of your players. That is, I mean,
Well, totally. I think you just go. You go into these games, Steve. And these are professionals, and there's a lot of emotion going into the game. There's a lot of passion for what they do. They both know it's a big game, so there's a lot of adrenaline, and you get all this pent up energy, and then it totally shifts. And I think that shift just would rattle anybody's psyche.
absolutely.
And so it's like you're going from 100, and all of a sudden you have to slam on the brakes, and it's just like, wait, what? Like, it's again, it
Trust
was,
me, I know how that works.
yeah,
And
I know you do.
so
Um,
we have some great comments over there. I don't know if you wanted to share
oh
it.
yeah, I can share some. All right, well, let's see here. Okay, well, we got Chris coming in here too. Um,
Chris is always there for us.
yeah, of course. Chris says I cannot see the NFL game being played between the Bills and Bengals. I'm with you, Chris. Again, I keep getting back to that. I don't know how you go back to that game. I just don't know. I just think it throws a wrench in terms of scheduling. But I'm fascinated to see again how they handle that. Let's see here. Rhonda Merrill writes in, they need to stop blaming others. It just happened. You need to do a prayer for him. I agree. I mean, that's really all you can do. I thought that Bart Scott's commentary on ESPN was certainly tone deaf and did not I did not like his commentary at all. Putting some of the blame on T. Higgins, I thought was absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, really? I didn't see that.
Oh yeah, it wasn't good. I mean,
Yeah,
it
Skip
was
Bayless was extremely tone deaf.
yeah. So here's the thing. I wanna get back to I want to get to Skip's comments, and this is a one to dance around. I thought it was really poorly timed. I thought it was really poorly worded. I think that I don't think it was a malicious thing, obviously, but I think it was just really poorly worded. I think I kind of understood where he was going, but it was just not the time to be making a
No,
comment like that. It was just, and it made it. I can understand kind of where he was going, but it was so poorly timed and so poorly worded that, man, he got a lot of blowback for it, and he should have. I mean, look, he's paid for what he says and his opinions, whether you care about him or not. That's what he's paid to do, and I thought that his opinion and his timing here was worth the
awful.
criticism, and it was awful. I
It
agree.
was awful.
It
I
took
mean,
away talk about not accepting any human element into your take at all, Steve. You know, it's like he was like it was like treated him like he was like a gladiator on the in Rome or something. You know, it's like it was just really yeah really really bad. I think he deserved a lot of the criticism, and I think his network was pissed. I know his co-host was, and there was a lot of drama there. And again, likely, I think it was deserved, to be honest. Do you have any final thoughts on anything else of the situation, Steve?
no, I think we covered everything, and we just hope the the player Damar Hamlin recovers completely, and he's able to enjoy a full, happy life. At this point, football is way in the back seat. He's only 24 years old,
Yep,
so hate
I
seeing
agree.
that to anybody, but more than anything, we just want to see him recover because again, transcends football. You know, he's not a Buffalo Bill in this situation. He's a human,
Yep.
and you don't want to see anyone die doing what they, chose to do in their life and what their passion. So,
Yeah, especially at that age and everything too. There's just so many factors. But yes, again, prayers for Damar Hamlin and his family. We're going to step aside for podcast purposes and just take a quick break, and we will be right back after this. All right, Steve. I just wanted to come back in and I'm going to share a couple thoughts on the Bengals loss. The reason I'm doing this is because I had the fortune of going with my fiance's family. We had absolute great time at the game, except for the final result. But Steve, I did something I haven't done before. I was on the field pre and post game, which was awesome. Pre game. Walked around a little bit on the Bengals sideline. I ran into Scott Zolak. I ran into Phil Perry, which was nice. Talked to Andre Tippett for a minute. So it was cool to be on the field there from that perspective. And then obviously, for the game, I know this is old commentary now. I'll just say this. I was so disappointed in the Patriots' first half performance. I thought their second half performance, they took advantage of some Bengals mistakes, but I thought the most disappointing thing was that for the second week in a row, you had your, one of your best offensive players kind of, give the game away. Stevenson had the, poor debacle in Las Vegas the week prior, and then he fumbles it heading into the end zone 5 yards out, or inside 5 yards, as towards the end of the game for this one. So it was just really disappointing. It was just like one of those things where you're like, wow, they're about to come back, and this would be a very big marquee win, versus an excellent team in Cincinnati, and then it just is for naught. So that was really, really disappointing. And then post game, like I said, I was on the field with my family, so that was exciting. That was a fun thing, just as a personal moment. But for the game, Steve, just a really disappointing thing. And just if you have any thought on this, I was just sharing that, but if you have any thought on that, we'll get to the Dolphins game.
Yeah, that Bengals game. I mean, you and I talked offline about the Vegas game, and the way it ended. I was worried that it was going to carry over to the next week against the Bengals, and they might not recover from it. In that first half, it certainly looked that way. It looked like they had packed it in, and then they came back in the second half. Once again, the defense ignited his team. They gave him a touchdown, and all of a sudden, it looked like they woke up and they played some really good football in the second half. They shut out the Bengals. I think Joe Burrow only had like 91 yards passing in the second half. They shut down the run. I thought, it allowed the offense to finally wake up and actually do something. So, but too little, too late, and they fumbled it away. And I'm sure we'll talk about, forward progress has stopped because it played a role in the Miami game. And, you have to wonder if that call was made there, maybe the Patriots win.
Yeah, it was weird because we have certainly seen whistles quicker, in terms of forward progress stopped, especially when a guy starts going backwards. But I thought the referee's explanation afterwards, I thought was a good one. He thought the legs, even though Ramondre started going slightly backwards, his legs were still kind of pumping, and he was really fighting for it. And I'm sure that might be a good teaching moment for Bill, where it's like, you start to go backwards. That's where you start to get worried about ball security issues. And I think an underlying factor of this, Steve, is that Stevenson has some ball security questions that he's had a couple of fumbles in his last 2 years. So I think it's something to just kind of keep an eye on. I don't think it's a big problem, but he's had a couple of fumbles, and more than you think. So I don't know, something to think about. It was a disappointing finish. But again, that was just a couple weeks ago. I just wanted to share that, I was at the game, and I know we didn't do a show last week. So, we can flip it over to this past week where the Patriots beat the Dolphins 23-21. I thought it was a really exciting, really exciting game, for the Patriots to pull out. Mistakes on both sides of the ball almost hurt them several times. Give me your opening take on the Patriots-Dolphins game from this past week.
Well, one of the keys I put out prior to the game was they had to start fast for a change. In the last 3 games, they had been outscored in the first half 69-20. And they keep digging themselves into these holes where they can't dig out because, the offense isn't good enough, I guess is one way of putting it, to dig themselves out of it. So I said, one of the keys this week, start fast. Don't dig yourself into a hole. And their first drive, I thought, hey, they look like they're awake. They look like they're motivated, and they move the ball down the field. I thought the catch by Tyquan Thornton really got them pumped up. And hey, call it for what it is. Matt Patricia came up with a creative play call down at the 1 or 2 yard line, wherever they were, to make sure that Thornton had a free release and he was able to catch the ball and score a touchdown. And it was like, where's that been? Because those are the kind of plays they need.
There was
And
a couple of play designs, a couple of plays they ran that we were like,
yeah,
oh my God, this is an NFL offense right now. Like where has this been?
yeah. And then, then all of a sudden they went right back into that funk that we've seen so often this year. Between that drive and the third quarter when they kicked the field goal, they did absolutely nothing again. And fans were booing them coming off the field.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh my God, how did they go from that to this again? And I thought the defense deserves extremely high marks. I don't care that the Dolphins had a backup quarterback in, because Teddy Bridgewater had more than double the starts in the NFL that Mac Jones had. So he's not, some career backup who never plays. Okay. And he has Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and those guys have a habit of getting wide open. And they weren't. You saw Bridgewater have plenty of time on lots of occasions, and he's having to hold on to the ball because nobody's open. And the fact that the Patriots held them to both 55 yards or less in the game, that's with your secondary all beat up. I thought that was incredible. I think that the defensive coaches came up with a great game plan, and it allowed them, to hang around in this game. And once again, the defense steps up. Kyle Duggar intercepts, returns it for a touchdown, and all of a sudden the Patriots look like an NFL offense again.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I absolutely totally agree. And look, the game did change a little bit when Teddy Bridgewater came out of the game with an injury. Skylar Thompson came in. Thompson was pretty erratic, as you would expect for a a young third string quarterback, and really, it took a lot of what Miami wanted to do away, Steve. But again, I think, like to your point, I think you said the Patriots defense still deserves credit for this game. I thought they played well. I know sometimes I think people are a little harder on this defense than they should. If you go through the season, the defense is the reason they've been in position to win a lot of these games. So it's something to keep in mind. Aside from one or two runs, I thought the run defense was excellent in this game for the Patriots. Really bottled up what Mike McDaniel was trying to do. I thought it was a little weird that Miami was not really doing any kind of RPO stuff. They were doing a lot of like power runs. It looked kind of like the Patriots running system, at least of past. And, they really weren't able to do much, on the ground. And I think another week, Steve, where Mac Jones did not turn the ball over, which I thought has been extremely key, not losing possessions there. I thought you saw some nice plays from Thornton, some nice plays from Hunter Henry, from Jacoby Myers. Damian Harris was in the mix. I thought there was a lot of contributions from all the from both sides of the ball that led to this very important win.
Yeah, going back to Mac Jones, I thought his best throw of the day was kind of lost in the shuffle. That 29-yard pass to Hunter Henry, where he ran a post corner route, and there was like three Miami defenders in the area, but Jones dropped it right in the bucket, and it was a 29-yard gain. They ended up punting on that, but I thought that was a really good throw. And then back to the secondary, those guys played tremendous football, and the run defense was outstanding. Like you said, Miami came into it with a run mindset. They wanted to run the ball on the Patriots instead of RPOs. They were running right at them, which I found really interesting, because I thought, they would do those kind of stretch runs where they try to get to the perimeter, but it seemed like you said, a lot of power runs, and they ran the ball 27 times. So they made it a point. They were going to run the ball, and they only averaged 3.2 yards per rush. That's outstanding defense. I
thought Larry Guy, I thought Christian Barmore looked like Christian Barmore.
Barmore was
I think
awesome.
I think Juwan Bentley has been tremendous this season. We've been pretty critical of him in the past, but he has looked really strong, especially in this game. He was all over the place. And to your point, to the secondary, I mean, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill were held for a combined 7 receptions, 107 yards. I mean, you take that all day long against two extremely, extremely, talented game breakers, as I'll term them. And they are. They are one of the best duos in the league, if not the best. So it was, again, good defensive performance, important game. The Patriots needed to have it. Let's, Steve, as we wrap up the show, I want to talk about, kind of where the Patriots are right now, and where they stand. Okay, so right now they're standing at 8-8, and they have an important game with the Bills coming up here. I'm happy to see them right around this point, mostly because I picked them to be 8-9 or 9-8, and I'll be right one way or the other, so that'll be nice. I always like being right, but no, in all sincerity, it's a little frustrating with how the season's gone, and we've talked about some frustrations on the offensive side. I'm just a little frustrated because I feel like they should have already they should really be in the playoffs already. And it goes back to kind of dropping the ball, tongue in cheek, there with the Raiders' loss, which was really all on them. And then the Bengals loss, which was partly on a mistake that really can't happen. So it's just disappointing because in my mind they should be 10-6. There's a lot of other games we can go, but I'm talking specifically dumb mistakes that they made at the end of game critical situations where, they're 8-8. They should easily be 10-6 right now.
I think they should be 11-5 right now, because you go back to that Packers game, they had stopped Aaron Rodgers, had the ball at midfield. You pick up a first down, you're right there in field goal range, and they opted to be ultra conservative there. And for the life of me, I'll never figure out why you do that.
And look, even if you want to play that game, look at the difference between 8-8 and 12-4. But because I would throw the Vikings game in there too, with just a handful of plays, that weird Hunter Henry play and all that. I mean, that's the difference in the NFL, which is so hard. The difference between 12-4 and 8-8. We're talking about 6-7 plays, and that's a massive difference in your record. So it's tough.
They'd still be a very flawed football team.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but their seeding would be already, locked in, and they might not be facing Buffalo or Kansas City in the very first game, if, in fact, they do make it to the postseason. You know what I mean? Because I think this defense, as we've seen, can keep them in, the majority of football games. It's just like, you look at Buffalo. Buffalo scored 24 points against the Patriots, and a lot of it, this defense gets gassed at the end of games. They held Cincinnati scoreless in the second half in a game they really had to have, and they held them to just 22 points. I think this defense is capable of stealing a game away, but when your offense is just,
lifeless,
sophomoric, and your special teams has been a disaster for a lot of the games this season, the margin for error is zero. And so that's the frustrating part, because I think, if they were even just getting a middle of the road offensive output, they could be dangerous in the playoffs with that defense, because as we all know, defense and running game travel.
Yeah, and they traveled deep into the season. You're talking about traveling on the road and, throughout the marathon, which is a season. And I just want to share two things from Chris. One kind of ties into what we're talking about is it seems like a wasted year for Mac Jones. Bill's made some questionable coaching choices, and we're going to get to we'll get to those throughout the offseason. We have plenty of time to discuss what he's talking about here, about his weekly fire Matt Patricia and look at the special teams rant and what's going on with the players and coaching. Chris, I am with you all the way. We will do that. And he also has a question about Can you explain the lack of Kendrick Bourne, especially after his performance against the Bengals? And honest, I'm going to be as honest and boring as I possibly can be right here. I am so confused by the Kendrick Bourne situation for the entire year. I can't even begin to tell you. I have no clue. I don't get it. Nothing about it makes sense. They use him against the Bengals, and you're like, where has this guy been all year? This is the guy that Patriots fans have been clamoring for. He had such a good season, and then he is non-existent, disappears. It makes no sense, Steve. I don't understand it.
Well, and then, that 89-yard drive that they iced the game with, how does it start? They're backed up on their own 11-yard line, and they're all of a sudden they're like, we're going to run Kendrick Bourne on a shallow crosser because he has athleticism. He gets them 16 yards. They're out of that shadow of the end zone, and now they can run their offense. And then as soon as he caught that, nothing.
Yep.
And that to me is, it's not even frustrating. I think it's at this point, it's almost criminal what your coaches are doing to this guy, because when they do decide to use him, he produces. Granted, his first snap in, he made a blunder. He had a false start, and later on, I can't remember what play it was, but I wrote about it. He whiffed on a block on one play, but throw this guy the damn football. I mean,
that's how everyone feels. I mean, now at least people.
I love Jacoby Myers. I think he's a fantastic football player. He's got guts. He's got good hands. He's all about the team and all that. But the one thing he doesn't have is yak. Wherever he catches it is pretty much where he's going down. And, when you're backed up like that, or, when you're in your own end, you have a guy there that can catch the ball and
make someone miss.
Yeah. And, my thing, I look at Tyreek Hill. What do the Dolphins do with Tyreek Hill all the time?
Get him into space.
They get him into space by putting him in motion. And so he gets a free release. We know Tyquan Thornton, because of his slender frame, struggles with that. So put him in motion, and start using him for what, this kid has incredible speed. Utilize it. They started to do it a little bit, on Sunday. And I'm like, what has taken you 15 weeks of football to figure out? I don't know.
I think we're all scratching our heads, and it goes back to wondering what the coaching, the whole offensive coaching system, what's happening behind the scenes, everything. It just makes little to no sense, honestly. And so I can't explain the Kendrick Bourne thing at all. But anyway, Steve, so again, we're not going to preview the Bills game because we don't, as of right now, we're recording January 4th. And we don't know if the games are going to be played this weekend. If there's a game this weekend, Steve and I, hopefully Russ, will find a time to do a preview show for the Bills game. I will say we can just, why don't you give me an opening thought on the game coming up with the Bills, whether it's this weekend or next weekend, just a quick opening thought of, what you think about the game, because to me, obviously the Bills have had their way with the Patriots, the better half of 3 seasons. And we know how talented they are, and how much trouble they've given the Patriots again. But I do think that the Bills are suddenly in a really weird spot. Okay. And it's who knows mentally how their players are going to handle the rest of the season. And I pray that Buffalo and the league is having some counseling available and some people that guys can talk to, because I don't know how, you can, it's like, what's the appropriate amount of time? How long do you wait? They're still worried about their teammate in the hospital who is making some progress, but they don't know how, it's still a very extremely tentative situation. He's in, intensive care, and, it's like, how do you? It's like I don't know how you table that and how certain guys will process it. Certain, not. I mean, would it be overly shocking to you, Steve, if there was 2, 3, 4, 5 Bills players that even say they were playing this weekend, just said I can't do it? Like I would not be shocked by that. And I don't know. I know it's not something that's easy to talk about, but my just thought is I just wonder how the Bills players how they react. And again, it's no criticism. It's just
No,
it's just
no.
human to human, understanding emotions and feelings and going through that. I don't know if the NFL, that's why I just don't see how the NFL lets these teams play this week. And if you don't let these teams play this week, maybe you just give the entire league the week off to kind of just have people be with their families and talk things out and process things and see how the status of this young man hopefully improves before you take the field again.
Yeah, that's a great question because I think if the Patriots go to Buffalo this weekend, they'll get annihilated, honestly, because
Probably.
that place is going to be a roller coaster of emotions.
I
The
agree.
place of absolutely rocking, and I think the Buffalo players will respond in kind. Now, if they have to go back to Cincinnati this weekend, I don't know how that will affect them being back on that same field again where all this happened. I would be kind of leery if I was a Buffalo fan if they had to go back because that might have the opposite effect of them playing at home would just in my opinion. I don't know, but
Yeah, I mean, no one really knows, right? I mean, no one
no.
really knows how the situation's going to play out. And again, it's Wednesday. We have some time before, but I know that's kind of a difficult thing that I brought up to discuss, but honestly, it's a real thing. We're talking about, again, we opened the show talking about the human element of everything, and I'm sorry, that's going to factor into the rest of their season,
Oh, absolutely.
and so it's like that's why it just seems like the right thing to do. Again, I'll say this one last time. I just think the NFL should call that game a tie, you know, and then postpone a week and you know eliminate the bye before the Super Bowl. I think in my opinion that's what I would do. But I'm not the commissioner. I certainly don't have his bank account. So I
Kansas City wouldn't be happy with that outcome.
no, they wouldn't be. But you know what, Steve? That's another weird thing about this whole situation is calling it a tie. I know owners won't say this. I know teams and players and coaches won't say this publicly. I'm going to say it because I can assure you, you don't think that a team that's teetering on the playoff line that could be affected by either a Bills loss or a Bengals loss, to get into the playoff picture, you don't think they'll be a little upset that they don't get a chance at the postseason? Even if they care about the young man, everyone would, but no one's going to say that publicly. Of course they won't, and but there would be people who were upset because they didn't get a chance to do that. But again, I think if I'm the commissioner, I'm just telling teams like, look, it's an unprecedented situation, and what are we supposed to do? I just don't. I don't know. I don't know if there's a right answer in this situation, Steve.
I don't either. I'm sure the Bengals wouldn't mind because they're kind of set anyway, and they only had an outside shot at getting the number one seed. But I don't know. It's impossible to judge at this point. We'll see what it all plays out, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the league responds to this and how they go forward.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I'm sure they'll be under criticism one way or the other. But it's a situation where, I think everybody is just trying to navigate these muddy, murky waters as best they can blindly. So, all right, again, so we'll wrap up the show for the day. Again, for just one more time, if the Bills and Patriots play this weekend, we will get a preview show out. If not, we will preview the game next week heading into it. Okay, so we will that will be tentative. Check our Twitter accounts. If you're watching on YouTube, they're listed below us. And check our accounts. We'll let you know when we're gonna do a show. We are sorry that Russ Goldman couldn't be here. He got detained We were hoping he was going to be able to join us at some point, but hopefully we can get him on the preview show because I'm sure he would like to share his thoughts. Again, just one more time, praying for Damar Hamlin and his family, especially those close to him, his friends, his teammates, everyone. Just really, really incredibly sad situation, and I hope the young man is okay. Steve, any final thoughts?
No, I just, I mean, we've covered it all. I just hope they figure out a way to proceed for the rest of the season, in an equitable manner, so no one feels like they were cheated out of anything. And let's just hope that this young man gets his full recovery and is home with his family.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Again, I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of Patriots 4th and 2.
As always.
As always, again, I hope you all had a fun, healthy, and safe New Year and holiday season. I would like to mention, please subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Please leave us a review, like it, share us. It helps keep us high in the podcast rankings and help other Patriots fans find us. Again, please check out PatsFans.com for some excellent content by Steve, by Ian Logue, the rest of the group. And we will see you guys next week.